Can we go into this slideshow? Now see, so almost you all know that Himalaya mountain chain emerged from the sea bed due to collision of Indian plate with that of Asian plate. And what is not commonly known is that the Himalayan terrain had a protracted history dating back to around 1900 million years. The area that constitutes the Himalaya witnessed 8 episodes of extensive igneous activity, 3 ice ages, 4 periods of regional aridity, 4 cycles of rebuilding, and 5 repeated withdrawal and invasion of sea. Thus, geologically speaking, the Himalaya was not built in one go. The making of the Himalaya is a fascinating saga from the seabed to snowy peaks between 1900 million years to recent. And during this period, from 1900 to recent, the position of Indian plate kept on shifting unless its collision with the Asian plate. The movement of the plate, obviously because it moves from latitude to longitudes, results in varying geographic scenario which affects the climate. Just to give you an idea, this from 200 or 2000 million years or 2 giga annum, 1 million, 1000 million years, supercontinent was known as Columbia. You can see this. And from 1000 million years to 0.7.5 or 750 million years is the period we call it Rodina. And from 7.5 to 0.3, that is beginning of is the Gondwana. And from Permian onwards, which is Pangea. So you can see the general setup of these places. We can show it in the details. Now, at 1800 million years, India formed part of supercontinent called Columbia. People also call it Luna. But it is done on the basis of paleomelitic remnants. And so, since that all the information is not properly available, it's available in parts, there are different reconstructions. You can see 2 of them here. And this was 1860 million years. And then around 1000 million years ago, the Columbia fragmented and the plates reassembled to form Rodina supercontinent. It lasted around 750 million years, fragmented into the form Gondwana supercontinent.
Bhargav sir, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just keep your computer near yourself? There is some sound disturbance, sir. Can you move more towards her? Maybe yes.
I don't know if I put it on full screen, it just disappears. Let me see once again. Is it okay now? Can you see the pattern?
Yeah, this is okay now, sir. This is okay now.
But it's disturbing my how to.
No, it's okay, sir. It's okay. Fine.
No, I want to remove yours. Your screen is coming here, which I don't want because it obstructs my. I don't know how. Can I put down this share सब खत्म करूं? No.
So, sir, ठीक है, sir. Yeah, now you can start, sir.
वो आपका यहाँ पे सवाल है ना, मेरा राइट अप सब खत्म हो जाता है तो stop video.
सर अभी ठीक है सर, एवरीथिंग इज ओके नाउ.
Okay, so it was 1,000 million years ago that the Columbia fragmented and the plate reassembled. You can see this is how it was. India was somewhere northwest of East Antarctica. Australia was somewhere here. And this was a time when we were in the lesser Himalaya. It doesn't concern the Titian part. Now, this was the time at 300 million years, as I said. That was the time, a rift. There's a Permian time, that is the Gondwana time, and around something strong,
नहीं, बस just नहीं, इसको सर साइड में क्लिक कर दीजिए कहीं पे भी, ये ठीक हो जाएगा. बस ऐसे ही क्लिक कर दीजिए सर, यहीं पे बस हो जाएगा ठीक. बस ओके.
So I'm not getting what I want. So you see, this is how the rifting begins. And in this rift, that was around 750 million years or 600 around years, the sediments which are deposited were known as the Titian sediments. The Titian sedimentary sequences are preserved south of the Indus Valley zone and north of the main central thrust. For the higher Himalayan crystallines, these sediments, particularly the pre-300 million years, are also described as peri-Gondwana sequence, because in the real sense, the Gondwana or the Titian sediments or the Titian sea, they say it begins from Permian onwards. So these successions are preserved in various inclinoria, and people often call it basin. Basin means it's isolated, but they were all connected because we see the same type of lithostratigraphy which you start from Srinagar with some changes right up to Bhutan and Arunachal. Most of it has gone to the Tibetan part, north of Arunachal has gone to the Tibetan part. So the central area from west to east, first of all, we have Srinagar or Kashmir, and then south of it is the Chamba Bhadarwa or Kandi. Then Spiti Zanskar is continuous, and then Bambana, Garhwal, and Humayun, that is Kalapani, Nepal. And Nepal, we have two isolated, West Nepal and then East Nepal, Kathmandu. And finally, in Sikkim, we have very little of it, and Bhutan. And finally, the Arunachal part. So the portions which I have shown light blue color is the Eocambrian part of the to early Paleozoic of the Titian part. And what we see dark blue with the pricks is the younger sequence of the Titian sequence. Now the deposition is started with, as I said, a bit of a rifting. And that was around 540 million years Cambrian with a shale. Was the basin shallowed around 540 years with shale, siltstone. It continued till 495. And initially we get what you see on the magnetite tuffs. You see the rifting gave magnetite tuff in north, and we have Singhi volcanics in Bhutan and Kyola trap in Salt Range. This is how the basin began, and then the deposition was mostly of the plastics, and it's only towards the end you have the stromatolitic stone deposited in Spiti and a very thick sequence in Zanskar. And the Cambrian sediments are present in all the areas, though in Nepal, probably much of it has been eaten up by the granites. The most complete and the best study sequence is exposed in the Spiti Zanskar, which is taken as a standard section to reconstruct the geological history of the Titian Basin. And at 542, that was almost the Precambrian Cambrian boundary, there was a lot of oxygen in the atmosphere, and that led to explosion of life. A variety of life appeared, notably trilobites. Traces of its locomotion are preserved. And trilobites are supposed to be ancestor of the present-day cockroach. And then we have shelly fauna, cranoids, echinoids, they all appeared, and the sedimentation lasted till 495 years. And these are the type of fossils which you get in the Cambrian. You can see echinoids, sea lilies, some primitive brachiopods, small shelly fauna, and some trilobites we have already seen. See, the Cambrian basin was obliterated. There was an orogeny, we call it Kuryak orogeny, which was not as big as the Himalayan orogeny, but it was a very important orogeny which is felt all over the Himalaya. Right from Kashmir to Bhutan, we have seen that there was a mountain building activity, and which, because just as the Himalaya has risen, the Cambrian sediments were also sharply elevated, and from where the very turbulent streams started flowing, and they brought very coarser material, pebbles, cobbles, etc., which formed a conglomerate, which is a, and this erosion lasted almost for about 8 million years. And after the area was peniplaned, there was transgression of sea, or you can call it the sea return, around 477 billion years. And the sedimentation at that time was a beach over the folded Cambrian sediments, marking an angular conformity. That is important to say that there was a mountain, not only mountain building activity, but folding and also thrusting during the late Cambrian and early Ordovician. And you can see angular unconformity. You can see the one on the left is angular unconformity, which you see. I can pick a pointer here, then it will be much easier for you. Anyway, so this one you can see angular unconformity left side in the upper Spiti Valley, and what you see in the Pin Valley. And after the conglomerate, the arenates were deposited. The importance of these arenates you see here, or we can repeat it later also, that the topography is parallel to the fold. That means the folds are very young, not much erosion has taken place. So this is what we call as first order topography. And these are all red quartzite, indicating warm, possibly an arid climate. So some geologists consider it as a fluvial sediments, but normally in fluvial sediments you get mud shales, etc. These are fairly well sorted sandstone, and sorting takes place only along the beach. So we consider it as a very shallow marine sequences only along the beach. And around 553, the sea level rose because it was from shallower to the deeper part it comes. And then the animals were corals with algae, crinoids, fish also appeared, and brachiopod populated the sea. Now we have not been able to find fish so far in Spiti, but other fossils are well known. This is left side you see a Paleophagoscites colony, this Manchak Valley Spiti, and this is how it looks. The reefal part looks in hand specimen, what you see on the right side. In this you have stromatoporoid, corals, crinoids, chain corals, and brachiopods. This is why what we normally call that reef is a metropolitan for the animals. All kinds of animals live. They are builders, they are dwellers, and they are also scavengers. Some build, others live, for example, in the shallower part, protected part, the bryozoa will grow, and where in this, within the coral, some algae will grow. So algae uses the carbon dioxide, manufactures oxygen, and oxygen is used by coral. So it's a sort of symbiotic relationship between these. And after that, there was another sedimentologic break or secession in the sedimentation. The sea withdrew. With the result, we have a 20 million years break here. That upper middle part of middle to upper Silurian is absent here, and the sea returned. The deposition commenced with the well-sorted sandstone muth in a beach or barrier island environment. And you can see the sharp contact between the Takche formation and the muth, which denotes disconformity. The difference between disconformity and what we normally say unconformity is that unconformity means angular discordance. That means there was a folding. But in this, we don't see any disconformity. That means there was no folding. The sea withdrew. There was some erosion, and it came back. And the sedimentation commenced in a very shallow basin, almost beach to island. And this is the one where we get giant uh, trackways of the giant scorpion. And that is a fossil which has been found only at three places, Spiti, Antarctica, and Australia. And that represents early Devonian. Now, this is a marker bed which you can see from Kashmir to Kalapani. Beyond Kalapani is absent because Nepal onwards it was the deeper part. And when you come to Bhutan, this, the sea did not come there. With the result in Bhutan, we don't see the equivalent of muth. And you can see white outcrop which you see from a distance is the muth quartzite or muth sandstone, which is a marker bed, and by this you can always know that the Paleozoic where ends and begins. And this is what I was telling you, the arthropods and giant scorpion traces, Diplodocus biformis palmicium antarcticum. Palmicium antarcticum is the technical name for the giant scorpion, and they are the forms which are found in the fossil assemblage of early Devonian Antarctica and Australia. Now, this is what I've been telling you, Vitesh, and others also, that this rare giant scorpion fossils, which you can see the photograph and sketch also, has been totally destroyed by the road building in Spiti Valley. It's such a rare thing which you see it in three places in the world. One was India, and it's no more available. This has been just bulldozed by the Himachal PWD. Now, when the slight deepening, with the deepening, what happens that most of the plastic part is in the deltoid part, and the sea is free from detritus, and then the sedimentation of carbonate begins. But it's a very gradual, it fluctuates between stable, deeper, shallow alternation. And finally, the mud passes into, this is the first step bend of the carbonate is taken to mark the beginning of Lipak. And in the lower part of Lipak, we have the Middle Devonian conodonts. So the rock, which is mud, immediately below Lipak, is assigned in Middle Devonian age. And you can see in this how the quartzite limestone alternate. This the Lipak sedimentation comprises shale, sandstone, carbonate, and it continued up to 346 million years. And within that, you have many several hard grounds. Hard ground is the one when there is a deepening of the basin, with the result low sedimentation takes place, and the chemical action starts taking place, and there could be a lot of organic activity, and that marks a what you call a high strand mark, and it is useful for the basin. It is not, you can't use it for intercontinental variation, but within the basin is a very important event, what we call flooding surfaces. This is because hard ground are very important. So these are the people who had come from, they are from Germany, some New Zealand and all. They came all the way to see hard grounds in the Lipak formation in Spiti. And when you go to the uppermost part of the Lipak formation, it was due to desiccation of sea in an arid climate, enormous, the shallower part of the basin, enormous thickness of gypsum was deposited. Gypsum is workable, but it's not economic because it lies in a very remote area. So unless we have some cheaper logistics, it can't be worked because it becomes uneconomic otherwise. Then after this desiccation, the sea was again deep rise in the sea level, and occasional beach to tidal conditions were restored. And it was around 346 million years. The deposition was of gray black shale and whitish sandstone, and it continued till 323 million years. It was a shallow near coastal basin. And because it was a shallower coastal basin, see, the part which was near the coast in the shallower part was raised up. So once it was raised up, there was no deposition of what we call co-formation of Peninsula shale in Kashmir like that, and so those parts remain positive. And these are the fossils which we get there. Now, in the basal part of Pog, as I said, a very shallow basin, we get some plant fossils. You can see the central part of the top portion is plant fossils. So the plants which are growing near the coastline, they drifted into the sea because people think that because it's a plant fossil, the sediments are freshwater. But it is associated with the marine fossils. The other interpretation is that the plants drifted during the low tide. They were sucked into the marine basin and form part of the marine sequence. Now, this was the time when the Gondwana glaciation began. Now, Gondwana glaciation, when you have, that is the freezing part, much of the water freezes. With the result, sea level rises, goes down. When the sea level goes down, obviously many rocks are exposed to weathering. what was in the shallower part of the sea is exposed, and they form the provenance for the deeper part of the basin. And normally, the conglomerate which we get in the Spiti or even in Kashmir are not true glacial beds. Probably the glaciers, the real glaciation portion was the peninsular part, and by the time glaciers reached this part, they melted, and that melted part was brought through by fluvial or streams to the other part, and you see what you see the important ridges on these hill slopes are the conglomerates, and so these were got transported by the streams originating from the melting of the glaciers, and they are, and it continued up to 298 to 300 million years. And there is a controversy whether at that time India was part of Gondwana or had already been part of Pangaea. This is still not solved. This is how the conglomerate looks. And at that time, by the time you finish it, all the continents have reassembled in the supercontinent of Pangaea, and where all the continents huddled together to form India at that time. Now you have seen that Rodina at that time, India was somewhere to the northwest, and Antarctica was further up. Now the entire thing has changed. You have Africa, and then on this south eastern side of Africa, you have India, Antarctica, and Australia. Now this was the scenario before India started drifting towards present position. Now this fossil and rock evidence were utilized to reconstruct the paleogeography of this period, and this is how the Pangaea has been reconstructed, fossil evidence and paleomagnetic evidence. Now about 298 million years, the sea covered many positive areas. The Titian formation comprising sandstone, because when the sea glaciers melted, the sea level rose, and the sea level rose. It was not very high level. The basin was too shallow, and then in the shallower part, the Titian formation was deposited. So this marks conformity or disconformity Titian over the older formations. In some places it is over the Mut, some places it is over the Dipak, and this is how the sedimentation continues up to 290 million years, and that was the time when the sea was very shallow and rough. The shell wells, that is Eurytesma, which you see here, they say it was found only in the depth of about a meter or slightly more than a meter. And that's why in such a high energy sea, the shells were very thick. That is how nature responds to the changed climate and the environment, because thin shells would be destroyed in a rough sea. So the shells at that time, whether it was Eurytesma or Deltopecten, they were all very thick shells. And these fossils are found in Australia, indicating the proximity with India. And the sedimentation was disrupted because that's what we call the Gondwana rifting. Gondwana rifting when took place, there was volcanicity in Kashmir and Zanskar. In Spiti, we don't see much of it except in Chandra Valley. But what we see here are very thick sills. And when the rifting takes place, you see there are two things. When you have a mountain building, that is subduction, the sea recedes. But when there's a rifting, the sea spreads. So with this rifting, there was another transgression of sea, and that was the one in which was a deeper sea which under anoxic conditions between 259.1 to 254 million years. Fossils of deeper water animals proliferated along with the Ammonites, and the sedimentation terminated in Spiti with a break of 3 million years. But the sedimentation commenced at 250. I'm talking of Spiti only because here there is a break between Permian and the Triassic. But in Kashmir, there is a continuous succession from Permian to Triassic. But in Spiti as well and in Kashmir, there is a sudden change in the fauna. What you see, the Permian elements, they disappear and the Triassic element appear. And you see this black shale you see is the Dungri, and over that white one you see is the Triassic sequence. And this section we have sampled and is no more visible because the PWD people have constructed a wall here. And this was a section which we have made famous internationally. And as we said that when there was a deepening of the sea, shallower part, the sea spread over to the shallower part also. So what was forming coastal areas of Lahore, Chamba, etc., they were flooded and the sedimentation commenced with the upper Permian, that is from the Cyclonobus oldhami, and it continues later. So this is the other work, which was in 298 to 201 million years. The sediment transfer the Cambrian metasediments. This is very important. I hope almost everyone knows that at 250 million years, the entire world witnessed a most pronounced extinction event when 90 to 95% of marine life and 70% of terrestrial life vanished. One view is the volcanicity in Siberia and China raised the carbon dioxide level, which led to increase in the temperature about by 5 degrees. The raised temperature affected the ocean's temperature, which melted the frozen methane reservoir, expelling enough methane to further raise the atmosphere temperature. Another hypothesis suggests that hydrogen sulfide as the ocean bottoms it emanated and which accumulated in anoxic zone and finally rose in the atmosphere, destroyed the ozone zone in the upper atmosphere, and permitted ultraviolet radiation leading to mass mortality. And the latest view which people say is there was a large bolide impact that led to extensive forest fires and which forest fire masked the atmosphere. And within a period of 10,000 years, there was a rapid increase in temperature leading to mass extinction. See, we are much closer to the truth in Cretaceous, but here the opinions differ. This is how we have sampled, you can see, we have drilled. You can see it is almost continuous drilling which we have done 1 centimeter scale to find how the fauna has changed and what is the break. So between the upper Permian and the Triassic, that is Beacon Formation, there is a ferruginous layer which earlier people had missed it. And when we went there sometimes, it was in 1982, we found that there is a very marked break and which is present throughout the Spiti. And the ferruginous layer at Atatu. Now, unfortunately, again, as I said, the first 3 or 4 locality can't be seen anymore because they constructed a wall. Now, Kungri black shale represents is about 250 million is age about, and 4 million years are absent along this contact. It varies from 3 to 4 million years. The absence means we really do not know where the sedimentation ended. Now, because the sedimentation ends, then there is erosion. Some places the erosion may be more, other places the erosion may be less. Where the erosion is less, the break may be about 200 to 300 million years. Where the erosion has gone much more, then we say the break is 4 million years. But the main thing is that there was a sea returned, it was at a 251 million years. And this is how the sedimentation of the Paleozoic started. In the Cambrian, it was mainly from very shallow part, it's subtidal, low energy intertidal. And after that, when you have a break, the conglomerate begins from the beach, and then slight deepening, the conglomerate give yield place, sandstone, and then another deepening when you have the coral reef or polar algal reefs. And then was a break, as we said. After the break, the sea returned on the beach. That was the boot. And then you have a deepening after that, and further shallowing, which leads to the gypsum, and it keeps on shallowing till you get into conglomerate, and then the volcanicity, and after volcanicity, you have Ketchum or sandstone, another break, and then the sedimentation is at a mid shelf. And that is toxic, and that is very important because there could be a source for oil. Only thing is that we have to find the majority. And unfortunate part is that probably it has been heated too much, so you may not get oil, but it is good enough for shale gas. So it was a degassing of the carbon dioxide, because we said because of the break was because of the major volcanicity in Siberia and China. So it gives rise to a lot of oxygen, so carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide becomes source for limestone deposition. Degassing of carbon dioxide with some lime, it forms the limestone, and deposition of limestone. The sedimentation initially very small part was in a very shallow marine basin, but there was rapid deepening, and rapid deepening is attributed to rifting in Western Alps, especially in the French Alps. There was a deepening with the result, it was rifting with the result, there was a shallowing in this part. But the climate was still warm, and at time became better. And that was a very global climate change. The wetting part, they call it, give it a name, event, which is known right from Alps to Oman. That was the time when it becomes a wet, and because in the wet climate you have a lot of erosion. With the result, all the material is carried because wet, lot of rivers and material going into the sea. So the carbonate sedimentation ends, and the sea clastic, they are deposited. That is, if you remember the lithostratigraphy of Milan, then you will remember the Autoceras, Ophiceras, Nicoceras, Havenstromia, like that. And what we have called it, Mekin, Kaga, Chumyu, and then the plastics. So that was the beginning of the, so that was the climate, and then the sandstone were deposited, and the wet conditions were short-lived. The basin was shallow, conditions short-lived, shallow basin because some what you call pluvial climate ended, erosion ended, and the basin was clear, with the result that deposition of limestone and yellowstone consumed. resumed, and then that was a period of rebuilding mainly by corals. And that rebuilding is also known right from us east to Oman. And it was, we discovered it sometimes, I think it was in 1982 that I reported the reef. Our reef is slightly different from the Earth's. Earth's reefs are very high energy reefs. And in high energy, they are the real reef, as they call it, and huge thickness. But ours is slightly subtidal, slightly shallower. So this is what we call null reefs. And basin was large clam shells also built small reefs in the late Triassic time and carbonate rocks. Now, topographically, we were able to map everywhere. You know, Spiti is tough, such a tough area. We can't go everywhere, but luckily, when we classified the rocks, we classified it on the basis of, you see, dark shale is Gungri, that is Permian. Then you see a escarpment sort of thing, that is Meakin, lower Triassic, and sudden slope, that is Kaga, and steep, that is Chomul. Rama. Rama represents the wet climate, and then again a limestone. So these we could, where we was possible, we went and mapped other places. We used the aerial photos to map it. So this is a view of coral reef. You can see how they are the robust corals, Trichoismelia. And this is how the sedimentation begins in the Triassic, very shallow part. Then it is, by the time you come to the Carnian, it is close to the open seashells. That is the only time when the open seashell was available. This is because in this part, we start getting radiolaria. And then the shallows, this is the typical dynamic sedimentology. Shallows, and then you have the, what you should remember, the quartzite, what they used to call quartzite cities, that it goes to the beach, and then there was another deepening. With the result, you have the Kyoto carbonates. And Kyoto carbonate, you also get a small reefs there. Now, the Kyoto carbonates are overlaid by the black Spiti shales, which has a break of about 19 million years. And the sedimentation commenced in anoxic marine basin. Again, it could be the source rock for hydrocarbon. You can see here again disconformity. There's a break, but there's no angular disconformity. The carbonate is sharply overlain by the black shale. There's no alternation or gradation there. And this black shale represents 180 to 145 million years. The Dolostone, the youngest age is 201. So there's a sedimentologic break, or almost about 20 million years are missing from this contact, what we often call it upper Caluvian conformity. And these black shales are rich in Ammonite fossils, what we often commonly call it saligram. And the worst part is that they are being sold to foreign tourists by the local people, but varying depending upon the preservation from 100 rupees to 500 rupees. And then you see the black shale of Spiti alternates with the sandstone. And so there is no break from Spiti to Guimal sandstone of Cretaceous. It's continuous one. And Spiti shale is deeper in the basal part, it shallows towards upper part, and then by the time you come to the basal part of Guimal sandstone is oolitic, and when you go up, it becomes slightly deeper, and some people call it fish. And you can see now on the right side, you can see the alternation more clearly. This is a view. Left view you see the chicken limestone, and then on the right side you see how chicken limestone gradually changes into chicken shale, limestone shale. This is what we call the gradationial contact. And this is a deeper water because we get planktonic foraminifera, global truncana, global rotates. And this is the time when we say that the basin margin had become active. That means it had started traveling north and tilted towards beginning of towards the subduction part. How it begins that you have a switch over the Cretaceous sequence. Ophiolite wasn't placed as abducted masses because over the Cretaceous which is sedimentary rock, you have the ophiolite mass, and ophiolite is the oceanic crust. So when it comes over, that is what we call it abduction. When subduction takes place, much of the oceanic material is transported tectonically and comes to rest over sediments. You find it in Zanskar, you find it in Malla Johar, and that was the time at 54 million years then the collision had commenced and Coolland Basin had taken a shape. Coolland Basin is because the Indian sheet bends and the sag is formed. You can see in this photograph. And in Sikkim, in the Sanskar, the Kelcha formation and the Dumbar Paleocene, Miocene are deposited. So some people regard it as an extension of the Tethys because over the Cretaceous it was deposited. Others consider it as a transgressive related to foreland basin because they said Titian, according to them, the Titian sedimentation ends at the end of Cretaceous, and then there was another transgression because of the formation of is something not related to sedimentation, but you see, you have heard of anticlinal valley and synclinal hills, but here you see anticlinal hill. That is the first order topography showing that this phase of folding is very recent. It's not very old. With the result, the anticlinal hills have remained anticlinal. Anticlines have remained hills, and then you see synclines have remained valley. And similarly, a dome, anticlinal spur has remained as a dome. And come back to the first slide which I have showed you. You see these, you can see how the folds are parallel to, topography is parallel to the folds. No erosion has taken place. That means the younger phase is the first order topography. And on the contrary, you see Chikkim syncline is a synclinal hill. So this fold, that is a first generation fold, was older, where you could see, and the second last generation folds, F3 as you call it, were the younger. With the result, they preserved the first order topography. And this is how the entire thing has changed. And it starts with the lithospheric activated rifting initially with the basic volcanics along the near just below the Precambrian Cambrian boundary, and then see this is the sea level curve, how the sea level curve goes. And what you see, the black one is the global sea level drawn by Bilal Haq and others. And red one is the one what we see, were able to find in Spiti. There is a parallelism that shows that any event, wherever it takes place, whether global, in America, Australia, it has repercussions all over. And that's why when we say that sequence stratigraphy is used for global correlation, sequence and event stratigraphy are very important, which have been almost ignored in our country so far. Only very gradually we are starting, but we are too late. So how first is rise, extensive regression, commencement of the organoporogeny, then sharp rise of the prominence, formation of some marine highs, and then stabilization. Stabilization, we have coral, stromatoporoid, brazos, algal reefs, etc. Then after that, there's a break, and then we have transgression of beach mid shelf and granitic activity associated with it. And then we have slight deepening and series of prograding cycles of the lipa finally getting into the arid desiccation of the basin, and then alternation between shallow and deep. You have this formation, and then the transgression. And on that transgression also there is a small conglomerate, but that conglomerate is different from the conglomerate, which is different type. That is a black conglomerate. And then we have extensive transgression because of Burma rifting, and then rapid deepening. And you have the patch reef of Middle Orion age, gradual shallowing, transgression, and Jurassic, the deepening of the basin in the late Cretaceous time, and then Eocene, etc. is formed. Hello?
Hello.
हाँ, बोलो.
हाँ sir, namaskar. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your excellent presentation and taking us to the entire journey of evolution, right from stromatolites to trilobites to corals to fishes. And it was a journey, I think, which anyone who has visited Himalayas can really enjoy, and the evolutionary process which we have shown, not only of the Himalayas, but also of the life forms from where we can actually see how the evolution of life actually took place. So there may be very interesting findings, but what I would like to ask you is when all this Spiti formation, what you talked about, so entire deposition of this Spiti, which we are seeing presently in the Himalayas, was it taking place? Do you have any idea at what altitudes and at what latitudes were these taking place? Is in the geological times?
Altitude has to be zero because there was sea.
Altitudes have to be zero, almost, or maybe below the sea level.
No,
and the latitudes.
So it was sea, and then you see that there was most of the sedimentation was in subtidal, so that was not very deep. Only when you come to the lower part of Triassic, that is up to Carnian, that was deeper part, and the depth will be easily around 50 to 100 meters.
3,200 meters?
Yes, 100 meters depth.
100 meters, okay, 100 meters. And sir, what could be the latitude of the Spiti at that time?
That you have to see. That you can go back to this. You have a reconstruction. So it was near Africa at that time.
Near Africa, okay, very good. So Nigel Hughes, and you're almost We are arriving on the same time at this time when entire life which we are seeing, which you have shown us today in Precambrian, Cambrian, and to Cretaceous and Eocene times, they were all almost like near to the equator at that time. You mean to say, yeah, not near to the equator, but near to
No, some, for
Africa,
example,
maybe.
some Rodina and all. Rodina, if you see,
Uh-huh.
or that was,
And the trilobites which we are seeing and other fossils, can we correlate them with the African and the Australian and Antarctica fossils which you're finding in the
yes,
Gondwana times?
Trilobite is another fossil which have very, this whose larvae travel very fast. So we
Mm-hmm.
can correlate, that is very useful. We can, but we have found maximum correlation of our trilobites with China.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some element in Australia also. This is a global correlation required.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, the most important part of trilobite is that the evolution in trilobite has been very fast.
Mm-hmm.
With the result, we are able to make a small zonation within the trilobite.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are, because of the radiometric dating, we almost know what level it proliferated all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And based on trilobite and its, we can also find small breaks. If
Mm-hmm.
one horizon is missing, that means you know it's a break. And that's what we are now trying to do in the Spiti and Zaskar, which is a very tedious job, which my younger colleague, E.P. Singh, is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we are about to revise the trilobite biostratigraphy. And it
Mm-hmm.
really is so useful that now take for example, uh, I take you back to the Lesser Himalaya. In Lesser Himalaya, we have tiny, prone, phosphate bearing tal,
Mm-hmm.
and some in upper part we have tal trilobite.
Mm-hmm.
Now this sequence is exactly akin to what we see in South China.
Oh, really? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now you see, it was normally if you see the present setup, you should say that the Titian part was nearer to China, so it should also resemble China, but it doesn't represent. So what we are trying to propound, and it has also been corroborated by one geologist or global geologist, Sellers in Arizona University, that at that time, Lesser Himalaya was closer to China and Titian block was somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It's only by late part of uh, later part of Lower Cambrian or Middle Cambrian, the Titian part came and joined the Indian plate. And that joining is probably the MCT.
Mm-hmm. The joining is the MCT, you mean to say, main
Yeah,
central thrust.
I mean, we have propounded it, and more or less similar view has been expressed by D. Sellers, but not many agree. But my my fact is this, that Lesser Himalaya has a sequence which is akin to what we see in South China, but in the Titian Himalaya is different. But when you come to the Titian Himalaya, the Middle Cambrian part, then it is same as China. So this part came somewhere Middle Cambrian time with the result, then it formed a continuity from this lesser Himalaya to the China's part. We have similar trilobite form.
You mean to say the so what I interpret from your code is like the South China The latitudinal position at that time may be near the equator.
Uh, but somewhere, but,
Yeah, maybe near what you're
somewhere.
talking about. South China is like
Yes, because
South China Sea, basically South China Sea, and
yes,
maybe Indonesia and
there
all
are
this stuff.
there are lot of reconstructions available,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
we have not done any work on that paleometric part, so
Mm.
I wouldn't be able in a position to comment. But all I can say is the geological setup suggests that up to the Mishukian part, that is the earliest Cambrian, Lesser Himalaya and China were closer, and after that, Lesser Himalaya, Titian Himalaya, and China were all together, forming maybe slightly with some barriers in between, but they were very close by.
Okay. So it's very interesting and very intriguing findings now, and maybe I think, but it is more also conflicting, because when we are talking about the collision and the timing, and if and the timings, because if below that we have this again the Eocene Miocene sequence and the
Hmm.
Shivalics.
Yes.
So how do you think that and then this side also, and if you go beyond Spiti and into Ladakh and along the Sucha zone, again these Himalayan sequence, the Central Himalayan sequence, the Tethyan Himalayan sequence, the sandwich between this uh,
Hmm.
Subathu, Eocene, Subathu, Dagshai, and or maybe you can say Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene sequence, and here along the Sucha zone, and also along the main frontal fault, also we get the same sequence like the Shivalics, and we have the Svatus and Dagshai and the
Hmm.
Kasauli formation representing Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene age. So this the entire sequence which you have talked about is just sandwich between if we say the entire sequence between the Indus Sankpa zones and the main frontal fault. This sequence is what you have talked about is sandwich between the Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene sequence and here. And but in Morni Hills near Chandigarh now, it's like Shivalics, and almost you get the Stromatolites sequence also, almost in the same levels, you know. So what do you say about that?
You see, there's a very detailed elaboration requires, but that I'll do later. But simple thing is, you take for example, Subathu is deposited over the Tal, over shell limestone of Cretaceous age in Masuri area or Kadwal Lansdowne area. It is over the Tal in Masuri and Garhwal area. It is over the Prol in Himachal Pradesh. It is over the Blani in Halog area. It is over all the three formations of the Simla group, Pasanpur, Chaosha, Sanjoli, and it is over the Shali, and it is over the infra-Shali, that is Mandi Darla volcanics at Darla. Now you see this entire column is around at least 10 kilometers thick. And now you find that Blani is, Subathu is deposited in all these formations. And at every formation, the lithofacies and biofacies are same. That means all these formations were exposed at the same altitude to provide a uniform depth for the Subathu basin. Now it will be the same altitude will be provided only when these sequences are folded and eroded peneplate. So then, once it is eroded, at many places, Subathu would rest over the Darla, over the Shali, over the Tal or Cretaceous or Bijini, whatever. So what you see at Darla, sorry, Shirla, Malla, or Kansar in near Saton, is the basement or Shali basement which is exposed in this part. And it's a, it is it is all because of the Korgyak orogeny. I have a paper, you read that paper in the Journal of South Asian. So this has been translated from distant area before the deposition of Subathu. And then the Subathu has been deposited.
So, again, okay, you get all these things right, but again, were they all autochthonous or were they all allochthonous units at the time of deposition, and then the folding starts? So
No,
maybe
it
they
is
are not on the right. They are not. Just
it
let me.
was to
So,
one
like
issue.
in this section which you have talked is right, but when you talk about the Inter-Sankpo-Sucha zone, again we have the Subathu sequence there also, with all these
That is,
oysters. We
see,
have.
that is, name. If you are talking in this part, you you have that paper by I.B. Singh. I think you are also an author of it.
Uh-huh.
So there were two arms which on either side of the central crystallines, and somewhere they merged, and then just as you have Arabian Sea going round to the Bay of Bengal.
Mhm.
That's the same sedimentation of the same age rocks on either side, but so the
So,
contemporaneous.
if we consider what you are saying of the same arcs, then probably the collision has not happened at that time, you know. So
No
the important
collision.
important
No,
thing
no.
is like in your presentation also you showed that when the India was moving, you know, you showed some diagrams in the other side. You showed some explanation.
No.
There was some mismatch
See,
between the timings, you know.
no.
If you can
See,
just show the slides and all.
there are two different things. See,
Mhm.
when you talk of the Paleocene, Eocene, Paleogene, it is a foreland basin. Foreland basin developed only after collision.
Mhm. So foreland basin. Then I have my own concerns because I've been working in Kasauli and we get all the flora and flora. What we are getting in flora from Kasauli are all not related anywhere to Himalayan regions, what we have plant fossils which we are finding, but they are all confined to the Indo-Malayan region. We get all the fossils which we are finding in Kasauli. The plant fossils, they resemble Andaman Nicobar Island, they resemble
Oh,
uh,
is
so
it?
my
Nay.
concern is the paleo-latitudinal position, and the papers which are coming from MIT University. They say that the Khardung volcanics, they are also like near the equator, 11 degrees north of it, and they have been transported. The entire mass has been transported, and then when you say that, so somewhere we have to keep what you say is like Spiti has to be south of equator when everything was being deposited, and Zanskar maybe right, and then things moved around. And yes, what you say, but the collision timing again cannot be
Look,
because then if Sabathu and Dagshai and Kasauli are very near to the equator, and then it takes a lot of millions of years to them for them to transport to the present positions. You know, we are talking about if Khardung volcanics, due to paleomagnetic dating, what they have done is now 11 degrees north of equator, and then Kasauli we are talking about is 4 degrees north of equator, and then the entire sediments are being taken out. So I think it takes a lot of journey, but again, timings. Can you
no,
give some concrete evidences on what basis you say that the timings are around 47, 57 million years? What you said in
look,
your presentation, please, sir.
In Subathu, you have ophiolite detritus.
Mhm.
Besides fossils, you leave as like fossils give you the age.
Mhm.
And now the fossils have been dated, absolute age is available. So
Mhm.
forget about that aspect, that is certain. Now, why we say that the collision had begun? Because you have in Subathu ophiolitic detritus. Not only in Subathu, you in Nepal, what is called Bhaskati formation and all that. That
Mhm.
means the oceanic crust had been exposed, and only then you will have ophiolitic. And then there are certain garnets which are found only in the oceanic crust. The detritus are found. So that is the main reason. And now coming to the paleometric mechanisms, for example, once Najman has said that Subathu to Dagshai is continuous paleomagnetically. But when they come to the detrital ages, they say it's a 10 million year break. Now,
Mhm.
paleomagnetism can mislead you if the rocks have been heated, because once it is heated, the paleomagnetism is lost or reset. So, we
So,
certainly
sir,
can't.
but even if you get some ophiolytic detritus in Subathu, doesn't mean that the collision had started. That can be an early collision when it was a basin, other basin, and then things moved. You know, maybe
Where, no,
equator, the sedimentation takes
are,
place, and then.
they have dated, it is all dated now.
No, I agree. Dating can be done, and dating is accurate. But
Uh,
how do you say that at that point of time the collision took place? You know, maybe subduction is taking place near the equator. Also, there could be some
where,
activity, the Indonesian activity. But because, sir, please, sir.
but where? So you must see somewhere. You just can't say it has happened somewhere where it has happened.
No,
Now,
ophiolites,
now,
sir, ophiolites का जो आप कह रहे हैं और जो एक आम उज़र भी है अपनी सवातों की लद्दाख में भी है. हमारा कंसर्न सिर्फ यही है कि जो हम उधर के एविडेंसेस देखते हैं जो बिल्कुल पाम लीव्स हमारे को लद्दाख में भी मिलते हैं और यहाँ पे भी हमारे को मिलते हैं. दे the flora and the fauna doesn't speak about any collision at that time. So it is just
flora कहाँ से?
हाँ
Flora will not talk about collision.
हाँ वही तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ नहीं पॉसिबल है ना सर.
Flora
तो जब तो at that time this entire sequence what you're talking about is so according to you, just I just want to summarize what you said was about from say about Rhodiana times to Pangaea times to Gondwana times to whatever. So the paleolatitudinal position at that time was very near to the present Gondwana land time, maybe south of equator. Do you agree with this, or you have some other points on that? The Spiti and Zanskar basins were deposited south of equator at the time when they were deposited. So it solves a lot of problems because we are seeing Himalayan part here, but at the time of the actual deposition, they were very near to the south of equator, very near to the Gondwana land.
No, because you see, it was a very big, Indian plate was much bigger. Much of it has been lost in subduction. So
no, I'm not. Yeah, I agree, sir. It has been lost, but whatever evidences we are getting in the form of flora and fauna from your records, can we say that these sediments were deposited very near to the Gondwana times and then they were transported? Because we cannot find any evidence of those fossils being present in the present day locality which we are seeing them in the Himalayas. Himalayas were not born at that time. So
किस फॉसिल की बात कर रहे हो आप? किस फॉसिल की बात कर रहे हो?
जो आपने fossils आज दिखाए हैं सारे जितने भी आपने दिखाए हैं.
नहीं वो तो ठीक है. Those fossils you don't.
Because they are all at sea level now. You only said they are all sea level, 0 level or below 100 meters below sea level. So I am talking about the paleolatitudinal position. So Himalayas were not there, and then the paleolatitudinal positions I'm talking about could be very near to the south of equator, and then they moved when the India plate moved. So they moved accordingly, and then we are seeing what Himalayas are today. So maybe yes, it was very interesting. If you have some comments on that, we can say. And I'll request anybody who wants to ask any questions to Professor Bhargava. I'll request any participants if they have any questions, they can ask Professor Bhargava. So
I'll just go back to.
I think, sir, it has been very interesting talk. Kishankant, can you just summarize everything? Acha, you're trying to show something, sir?
Of course, it has been a wonderful talk, Dr. Arya, and I think that Dr. Bhargava has cleared all the doubts we had in mind. And
sir, एक minute. Just see this, sir. एक मिनट
Which one?
दिस नहीं प्रीवियस वन सर, प्रीवियस वन जो इंडिया की मूवमेंट आपने दिखाई है, प्रीवियस स्लाइड सर, प्रीवियस स्लाइड कीजिए सर,
Okay.
प्रीवियस स्लाइड कीजिए सर।
जा रहा हूँ, वही जा रहा हूँ।
हाँ वो जो इंडिया वाली थी उसमें देखिए सर, प्रीवियस करिए सर,
Previous ही कर रहा हूँ।
एक और करिए सर, एक और करिए।
और करना पड़ेगा।
हाँ नहीं प्रीवियस करिए सर।
कहाँ जा रहे हैं हम?
नहीं कहीं और जा रहा है सर। और नहीं
नेक्स्ट स्लाइड करना होगा।
नेक्स्ट होगा।
ये दिया है ना?
बस ये वाला सर, ये वाला। अब सर इसमें जो आपने लेफ्ट साइड में जो मैप दिखाई यूरेशिया से टेक्टोनिक कोलिजन, तो आप देखिए सर इंडिया की पोजीशन 38 मिलियन ईयर्स में भी कोलिजन नहीं हुआ है। और जहाँ पे आपने यहाँ पे लिखा है ये 50।
अरे यू फॉरगेट वन थिंग, दैट इज जो आप ये प्रेजेंट बाउंड्री देख रहे हो, जो दैट एक्सटेंडेड पार्ट था व्हिच हैज ऑलरेडी डॉक्ड, इसको कहते हैं ना डॉकिंग। वन इज कोलिजन, अनदर इज डॉकिंग। By 55 million years ago, it has already docked the Benioff zone.
That is because we don't have much evidences for that. We will not comment on that at that point. But more or less, it was very interesting presentation. And then the timing of collision is still like we need to find more evidences from Indian side, and more data needs to come.
You should differentiate between docking and actual collision. Docking, subduction, collision. There are 3 stages.
Right.
I'll take you.
सर अब इसमें क्या है कि यहाँ पे इक्वेटर में भी ये पूरी एक प्लेट है, यहाँ पे पहले इंडिया कोलाइड किया है, तो दैट वाज द Subathu basin which they're talking about near the equator, and then first it was docking with the Subathu Dagshai basin here, and then it moves again with that sequence. So this is another theory which is coming up. इसमें क्या कि यहाँ पे आपका एरो है ना, यहाँ पे इक्वेटर है, दिस जो कोलिशन हुआ है पहला सबसे पहले यहीं पे हुआ है. This basin was extending right from Indonesia.
Collision तो बात की, तो collision जब हुआ तो सिवालिक बनना शुरू हो गया. This was the subduction part which had taken place, and because of subduction, docking and subduction, fold-land basin got developed here, and that fold-land basin was the one on either side जहाँ पर आपको ये Diluvian sediments मिलते हैं. I will come to
ये जो पहले ये एक collision, ये this is one collision model for explaining the collision between India and China, but the other model is we have two collisions theory, and first collision happens very near to the equator, and then the sequence moves further north, and then the entire these two sequence moves.
This is the most acceptable model. Now, what you are saying, there's the entire collision was not in one stage. Then the variation collided in the eastern part with the Nagaland or in the western part, and then there is a anti-clockwise movement that takes. So the docking and the collision varied from place to place, but not much of difference. That is going into the finer aspect.
Yes sir, समझ गए sir, because it has been very interesting, and your talk is almost like very similar to the talk which we had by Professor Nigel Hughes, and he was also of the same opinion that the Zanskar and the Spiti basins were deposited very near south of equator, near to the Gondwana lands, and because majority of the fossils.
This is the no, your equator will be somewhere passing through the heart of Africa.
Yeah,
and India is just south of Africa.
South of Africa.
South of
exactly, sir. So यहाँ पे जो deposition हो रही है और वहाँ पे deposition हो रही है, it makes a lot of sense, sir. But it has nothing to do with collision. I think whatever your sequence, what you told us.
यहाँ जो deposition हो रहा है, ये तो Paleozoic और Mesozoic का है, यहाँ tertiary का
हाँ, बिल्कुल sir, बिल्कुल. I agree. Because this is what the findings of Professor Nigel Hughes, who also gave a talk on this webinar. He also had the same opinion.
Neither use has access to our data. The work has been done by Indians.
Hey, he told us, sir. He mentioned your name and all. Then he categorically said that he mentioned your name in his presentation that he has been worked with you. But interestingly, he said that majority of his fossils which they worked on have similarity with Australian fossils and African fossils and Antarctica.
It was a long back, when they started talking about the Gondwana land. At that time, when you see the reconstruction was done, and the fossils were the main evidence to use. So it was done. Now we are getting more and more evidences. That's all.
So this explains everything, so we can have the Paleozoic sediments extending right from India to maybe this African north and then moving to North American side and then this Eurasia and the China. So it explains that we can have the Paleozoic sequence all along this coast. Stromatolites, Trilobites all can move here and can be similar. But the entire thing is then explaining the movement and the tectonics that still, I think, remains questions, because then this story of collision is about explaining how Subathu, Dagshai, Kasauli sediments, and from the other side, in the Sucha side, how the Indus Molluscs, Kargil Molluscs, and the Numa formation, how they also having similar flora and fauna which we found in the Subathu sediments behave. So they can be two different environments, but I think your presentation on explaining the Paleozoic times and the life which was prevalent at that time was really fascinating, sir. We really appreciate your hard work which you have done in the past, and I think this should be a lot of encouragement to the students, young students who are pursuing their career in understanding Himalayas. It's not about just going there and doing some work, but it is the work done systematically by workers like you in the past who have brought this entire Himalayas to life again. And I think your work will be appreciated in times to come, and with more and more geologists who are coming.
No work especially in a science like geology can be final.
No. Finally, sir, I'm just saying they'll be appreciated because more and more geologists like DP Singh and all and his colleagues and maybe other geologists who listen to this lecture in near future, they'll be inspired by your hard work which you have done in these remote areas at that time, because I can visualize, because in 1990s when we went in late 90s, it was like a terrible task for us to reach there when I went for the first time to drilling rig with the drilling rig. But the time you have working were like, we cannot even imagine, I think there were no roads, no communication, no lights, and how you traveled at that time, there were no roads. It was like we can't even imagine the times which you have worked and collected all this data at that time.
My first visit to Spiti was in 1962, and the road was only up to 40. 40 onwards, we used to track.
So, sir, any interesting incident you like to share and give any advice to the young geologists who plan to study the Himalayas and carry out some research? So some last words from your side, and then we summarize the today's talk on Earth Day. Any message which you want like to give?
What I would say is repetition of what Ganser said in Punjab University in 1976. When he came to Chandigarh and visited Punjab University, I won't name, but some of the teachers asked him, what should we do? He said, map, and map.
Map, yes.
So that is what is necessary. Unless you map, field geology is very important. Whether it is now, the trend is to collect samples somewhere and then put it in the machine and get. But unless you know the regional significance of that sample, it's of no use.
It's of no use. Very, very rightly said, sir. Very rightly said.
Take, for example, in Chor granite, there are different types of granites. So unless you have mapped you would not know which granite you are dating. Just calling it your granite is this age, it's no use. And you see, Professor Jain, he is now working. Now he has found people were earlier saying lower Paleozoic granite and all. He has found that there are enough granites of 830 million years age.
Yeah, in Ladakh also they have found some dikes which are about 14 million years.
So it's very important to first of all map and then know what are you dating.
Yeah.
Or whether it is sedimentology or like, and then unless you have mapped, unless you have interpreted, mineral modeling is no joke. For mineral modeling, you must have a very firm geological model.
So, Kishan Kant?
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you just take over now?
Of course, it has been an excellent discussion and, of course, a very informative session that has been given by Dr. Bhargava. And it has, of course, gone beyond what we thought at the beginning. And I hope that, just like always, we are thankful to Dr. Bhargava and all the other participants who remained intact during the whole discussion. It has been very enriching, very informative. And of course, as you have said, that for young enthusiasts who want to work in this field, it will, of course, add to their kitty, and in the future as well, they can refer to the information which has been provided in today's program. And Dr. Arya, for providing this platform, of course, it's of immense value for all of us. And it's a great initiative that has been taken by you. And definitely in the future as well, we would be hosting many more programs of the same kind, which would certainly work good for the geologist fraternity, for the archaeological fraternity, those people who are interested in such talks. And certainly the numbers are going to grow. Just like today, we had a good number of listeners. And I hope that in future, we'll be having many more people who will be coming to such programs and subscribe to this particular channel, which is being hosted by Tethys Fossil Museum. And someone, of course, was asking where is the exact location of the museum. It is in village Dhangiari, as I have already said, very near to Dharampur in Solan district in Himachal Pradesh, and not very far from Chandigarh. And you are all, of course, welcome. You may come to the place and have a look at how the things are being placed, how the things are growing up there. Thanks a lot once again, Dr. Bhargava, for being there today for us. And we hope that in future as well, you will certainly come and deliver more talks as and when we need your help. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And it was wonderful to hear you on this Earth Day. Thank you very much. So I thank all the participants also. And I think we end this session today. Thank you, Professor Kishan Kant.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. Good night.